Hello and welcome to our DFDS 2-night mini cruise from Newcastle to Amsterdam. We'd parked in the Port of Tyne car park, which costs £18 per day, which you pay in the terminal at the end of your cruise. And we took the short walk to the passenger terminal. We were taking the DFDS ferry, which operates daily between Newcastle and Amsterdam for cars and foot passengers, and is also available as a mini cruise, which is what we'd booked, for £136 for both of us, on one of DFDS frequent half-price offers. The price doesn't include food and drink, and I'll explain more about your options when we're on board. Inside the terminal, we checked in at the DFDS desk, then took a seat while we waited for boarding. Shortly after, we were heading along the long boarding ramp towards the ferry. We boarded on one of the car decks, and we took a lift up to deck 8, where our cabin was situated, to drop our bags off. We'd booked an outside cabin for this trip, which is more expensive than the inside bunk option, but in our opinion is well worth the extra money. Our cabin was small, but had all we needed for the trip to Amsterdam and back. There's a little vanity area, with a mirror, a light and a European power socket, a pretty comfy double bed, a decent sized window that lets plenty of light in, 2 bulkhead lights that have USB sockets in for charging phones, etc., and a tiny bedside cabinet. You also have a small ensuite with a sink, shower and toilet. There's hair and body wash for the shower, which is quite a tight space, but it's adequate for what it is. And there's hand wash by the sink. And just in front of our cabin was the forward observation deck, which we used quite a bit on this trip, although here in port there wasn't much to see. We headed back through the ship, and after a quick look at the deck plan, went through to one of the outside decks, where we paused for a look back at the long gangway onto the ship, and the cruise terminal and car park behind. We carried on upstairs, and to the rear of the ship, where we stood and watched the vehicles loading for a while.
In the meantime, you are most welcome to visit the guest service centre if you have any questions. Once again, we hope you have a pleasant journey with DFDS Seaways.
Then, as it was beginning to rain, we went back inside to do some more exploring. We passed by a cinema, with some quite recent movies showing. A small arcade and leisure area, then a second cinema. You can purchase tickets for these from the reception area. And from there we wandered through the Compass Bar, which was currently closed, but looks like a nice area to sit and have a drink. Then we arrived at the Columbus Club, which is a bar and nightclub. This was open now, but we headed through and out to the back of the ship again, where we had a quick look at Ambassador Ambition, which was docked behind us. Then, as it started pouring with rain, we went back into the bar and had a quick look at the menu, before ordering a couple of drinks. Heineken for me, and some rather sweet Prosecco for Suze. We sat there enjoying our drinks for a while, watching the rain through the windows. Then I spotted a rather large ship heading past us, and as the rain had eased off a little, popped outside for a look. And shortly after that, the loading ramp was raised, the lines were cast off, and we were underway. Our ferry made a full turn in front of the dock, and looking down we could see you're allowed to bring dogs on board with you. There were quite a few on our trip, and they had their own deck and sandbox. Then we set off down the river towards the sea. And we sailed by the Ambition on the way, and waved to them as we passed by. It's quite a nice journey down the river. We got to watch the Tyne ferries crossing from both sides of the water, then sailed down past North Shields, on our way to Tynemouth. Once we'd reached Tynemouth, we got a nice view of the priory and the castle. Then the Tynemouth lighthouse, and the South Shields lighthouse. As we sailed out into the North Sea and began our journey towards the Netherlands. We headed back into the Columbus Club. Where we had a couple more drinks. Then a band came on stage and played a few lively numbers, which got some folks up dancing. The band were quite good, and we stayed for a while enjoying the music, then began to think about dinner. So we poked our heads out for a look at the sea, where England was very much in the distance. Then we took a wander through the ship to the Explorer's Kitchen Buffet, where we'd booked dinner for £25.50 each. Food and drink aren't included in the basic fare, but you can either bring your own to consume in your cabin, not including alcohol, or book your meals when you book your tickets, or pay on board, although then you're not guaranteed a seating time. We got a seat by the window, and I ordered some drinks while Suze went up to the buffet. We really like this buffet. There's a very good selection and the food is really good quality. I started off with some sushi and a couple of odd bits, and Suze had the usual buffet eclectic mix. We then queued again for mains. I had a very tasty selection of sliders, fries, bitterballen and fish pieces. And Suze had curry, rice and prawns. We both really enjoyed our mains, and in spite of being pretty full, couldn't resist a trip to the dessert counter for some very tasty morsels from there. After dinner, we went for a wander around the onboard shop, which is huge and has a big selection of clothes, electronics, duty-free, gifts, sweets, drinks and a whole lot more. Then we carried on wandering past the onboard pub and the coffee shop. And we headed outside for some fresh air. And a look at the beautiful sunset. Then headed back in and past the busy pub, where there was a decent guitar vocalist performing. And we went back to our comfortable cabin to get some sleep. Next morning, looking out of our cabin window, the sea was calm and the weather looked good. We took a walk through the ship, past guest services, and back to the Explorer's Kitchen, where we also had breakfast booked for today, for £12.95 each. We got a nice table by the window again, and went up to get some food. Again, there's a really good selection of fresh, tasty food. I got a selection of cooked breakfast, and Sue's got cheese and meats. We got a full pot of nice strong coffee, and there's also self-serve bean-to-cup machines if you prefer. And then we got some nice fresh pastries and jam, which were really good. And sat and finished our coffee, watching the sea through the window. After breakfast, we went out to the front viewing deck to watch our arrival into the Netherlands. It was a beautiful morning, with calm seas and not too cold. And we watched the crew putting up the ship's flag and laying out the lines ready for docking. And pretty soon we were heading into Ijmuiden. And we were soon back in signal range for those who hadn't bought Wi-Fi for their phones, which is actually pretty cheap on DFDS, about €6 a day for the basic package. If you are travelling on a cruise ship, you'd normally go straight on here into the sea locks and up the North Sea Canal into Amsterdam. But the ferry turns and docks at the DFDS terminal right here, and you can then take a coach transfer into the city. And once we were docked, we headed off the ship and down through the busy passport control, which took us about 15 minutes. Then outside to get on the shuttle bus. This cost £9 per person each way, and it's about a 45-minute journey, which gives you about 3.5 hours in the city. The journey in took us through some typical flat countryside. Then past the airport, past some interesting modern architecture, passing by some rivers and bridges, then into the city centre, where we drove along past the cruise port. Then we turned around and pulled up between the cruise port and Central Station. Which is also where we'd be meeting the bus to return to the ferry later. The weather was beautiful, and we took a stroll down to the waterfront outside Central Station, where we watched the boats for a little while. Then cut through the station shopping arcade and up into the town. We paused on the way to watch some of the canal tour boats. This is a great way to see some of the city sights, and we have a video on our channel from last time we did one. Then we carried on through the streets. Until we reached our first destination, which was a Café Van Buren that we visited before, to get ourselves a couple of interesting beers. Suze had a delirium tremens, and I had a local Bon Chef IPA. These were both tasty and refreshing, but we had another bar we wanted to visit, so we bought some chips from Mannequin Peace, which were really nice, then moved on to our next destination, which was in Ijmuiden, which is a great bar if you're a beer enthusiast, with a couple of hundred bottled beers to choose from and a really good selection on draft. I had a pint of a really nice Weissbier, and Suze had a German lager. To follow these, I had the same as I really enjoyed it, and Suze had a really tasty Cherry Creek. And this is definitely our new favourite bar in Amsterdam. It was getting close to the time for our return shuttle bus, so we took a wander back through Central Station, where Suze took the opportunity for a quick shop in rituals. Back at the waterside, we sat and watched the boat traffic for a bit in the glorious sunshine. Then wandered up to meet the bus back to the ferry port. The traffic was slow heading back, but eventually it cleared, and we were soon pulling into the port. Where we found quite a long queue for passport control. However, once we got into the building, we spotted there was a separate entrance for Mini Cruise passengers, which bypassed a lot of this. And in just a few minutes, we were heading back onto the ferry. Back on board, we went straight up to the sky bar. To get ourselves a drink and a seat in the sun. It was pretty busy up here, but we had a couple of pleasant drinks and spent some time soaking up the late summer sunshine. Then we noticed the ship was moving, and we were pulling away from the dock. So I went and found a spot at the side of the ship to watch our sail away. With the glorious weather, this was a really nice sail out to watch. And I spent a fair bit of time filming as we headed out of Ijmuiden . And eventually back out into the North Sea. We had a booking for dinner at the North Sea Bistro, the onboard à la carte restaurant. This cost us £38.50 per person for 2 courses, or you can book 3 courses for £44.50. We were seated at a window table, with a nice view over the sea. And we had a look around at what is a very nice restaurant. There was a good choice on the menu, and we were started out with some tasty fresh baked rolls, while we had a look at the wine list. Our wine arrived. They have a really good selection in this restaurant, and we watched the wind farms off the Dutch coast as we waited for our mains. Mains arrived. I had the lamb, which was beautifully presented and delicious, and Suze had seasonal fish and risotto. We had a short wait for dessert, and they were definitely worth waiting for. I had the panna cotta, and Suze had mango cheesecake. And after what had been an excellent meal, especially considering this is a ferry, we went out on the front observation deck for some fresh air and watched the sun slowly sinking towards the horizon. And a little while later, we were treated to a beautiful orange sunset. We went back inside to the pub, where the guitar vocalist was playing again, and we ordered a couple of drinks. I had an old-fashioned, and Sue had Aperol Spritz. Our drinks were decent, and so was the singer. So we sat around until the end of the set, then headed to bed. Next morning, the weather was looking pretty nice through our cabin window. So we went outside to the front observation deck, where we could see we were approaching the English coast. We hadn't booked breakfast this morning, so we went to the coffee shop and got a nice hot cuppa and a huge fruit muffin each, which were really tasty. After breakfast, we went back out on deck, and we were much closer to the coast now. So we went back to the front and watched the crew preparing for arrival. And pretty soon we were passing between the lighthouses, and back into the Tyne. The sail up the Tyne towards the port was really nice in the morning sunshine. And we stayed out front enjoying the views. And as we approached the dock, we spotted one of the crew preparing what looked like a t-shirt cannon to fire a line ashore. This was pretty loud and made all of us out the front jump. Then we grabbed our things from the cabin and headed off the ship, back down the long gangway towards the terminal building. Where we remembered to pay for our parking, then we headed up to the car park, threw our bags in the car and headed home after a really fun mini cruise. Thanks for watching.